My dear students, welcome to the course of Architecture and Town Planning. I'm your teacher Ravindra Kumar Khiani, Assistant Professor, Department of Architecture and Planning, NLD University of Engineering and Technology, Karachi, Sindh, Pakistan. Today the topic of our discussion is location of industries and residential areas. Introduction. The theme of current lecture is location of industry and residential areas. In order to address this theme, it is imperative to answer different questions, such as what are the reasons for the location of a particular business or industry in a specific area? Was it just a snap decision, or is there more of a science to the decision? This is the subject of location of industry. Similarly, it is also significant to know why people decide about living in a particular housing scheme, whereas different types of residences are available at a variety of locations within city. The answers to these questions are outlined below. First of all, let's discuss about the location of industries and firms. An industry consists of firms that each have common characteristics in terms of the nature of their economic activity. The chemical industry, for example, is made up of hundreds of firms that have the common characteristics of being involved in either dealing with or manufacturing chemicals. These chemicals might be used for a wide variety of different processes, including agriculture, construction, medicine, and wide range of others such as textile, plastics, paper, cleaning, and so on. So individual firm might choose to set up their business in a variety of locations. In some cases, businesses with common characteristics are very widely spread. Other industries tend to have firms that might be clustered in a particular area. The crucial factor in many cases will be locating where the cost of production can be minimized. Planning laws and regulation might mean that it is not always possible to set up in the preferred location. Furthermore, the economist and later a sociologist, Mr. Alfred Weber, he was the writer of very high stature from 1868 to 1958. He pioneered in the work on the location of industry way back in 1910. His theory was based on the principle that business would seek to locate where cost could be minimized. If there were two locations, X and Y, where X represent a location where the cost of setting up was lower than Y, then firm would always go to the X location. Weber was writing at a time when the Industrial Revolution resulted in a number of large industries being concentrated in certain parts of the UK, such as coal industry, steel industry, shipbuilding industry, textile industry, and so on. Whilst the factors that were relevant to the firms in those industries are different from many firms in the 21st century, some of the basic principles he holds down are still relevant. There are a number of factors that will influence where a business will choose to be located. First is the nearness to power or energy source. Some firms require either a certain type of power or energy source or a particular amounts to be able to operate effectively. This means that one consideration for location is somewhere that has relatively easy access to such sources. This might be particularly relevant for a business that uses large amounts of power in the production process. In simple terms, the location has to be in a position to be able to supply the amount of power that a business might need. Some businesses need large amount of power to be able to produce, and this might be much more than is normally available from a domestic supply, and so there has to be that source available if location is to be viable. The chemical industry is an example of production that uses large amounts of gas, electricity, and water in production processes. Providing the amount of electricity needed for such processes is not the same as the amount needed by the average house. Second aspect is nearness to market. The access to a market for a good or services produced is an important component for some firms. The market in this context is referring to the customers who buy the good or services produced. In some cases, this can be the general public at large. Other might be far narrower. For example, some businesses sell their output to a small number of other businesses. The importance of access to a market depends on the type of business and what it is involved in. For some businesses, being near to customers is very essential. The obvious example is a snack bar, cafe, or ban kebab wala. To survive, such businesses need to be somewhere where customers will regularly pass by. In case of chemical firms, nearness to the market might not be quite important, as might be the case for online retailers, such as Amazon, where other means of getting to market are more important, and that is good distribution and communication networks. Furthermore, the importance of being near to the market might also be dictated by the nature of the product produced. Weber identified the importance of this in his original analysis. Weber noted that the ratio of the weight of raw material to the finished product might be a factor influencing the location. We refer to this as bulk reducing or bulk increasing industries. A bulk reducing industry is one where the finished product is less bulky and easier to transport and distribution than the raw material. For example, steel. Steel is a good example of this type of industry. Steel is made from combination of coal, iron ore, and fluxes, which are processed before being combined in a blast furnace, where molten steel is then processed into a steel slabs, plates, and so on. So in such circumstances, the cost of transportation, the raw material may be high compared to that of the finished product. A bulk increasing industry is one where the finished product might be bulkier than the raw material. A good example here is the furniture industry. The completed item of furniture tend to be far bulkier than the raw material used to make it. All right. Then there is a nearness to supply of raw material. That is also a major factor for location of industries. Some firms may rely on a source of raw materials for their business. If these raw materials are nearby, it is pretty much common sense that the transport cost can be reduced if the firm is located nearby rather than far away. This might be particularly relevant for the bulk reducing firms. In Weber's time, the steel industry tended to be located near to sources of coal for cooking and supplies of the iron ore. If raw material is not available locally, then a firm chooses to locate them near port or other point of import, where they can access the raw materials efficiently and at lower cost or lowest cost. In other cases, the raw material might be less obvious. In certain parts of UK, there tends to be a relative concentration of certain types of farming. In these cases, it might be the quality of the land for arable use that might be important. In other cases, it might be that certain types of land and area are more suitable for dairy farming. Even more obvious might be the proximity of many fish processing plants located near to the fishing ports or farms involved in the quarrying. Then the other factor is nearness to the supply of labor. All businesses need labor to operate. In some cases, this labor has to have a high level of skill, and some areas have concentration of industry in regions and have become known for having a pool of a skilled labor available. In such cases, it can save a firm both time and cost locating near to the supply of the labor. This can be extended if local labor supply is relatively cheap. A number of firms in the recent years relocating some of their operations to different countries to take advantage of the supplies of the skilled and cheap labor that exist. For example, the call centers in India and James Dyson's relocation of manufacturing capacity to Malaysia. The Economics Intelligence Unit reported that at the time of the decision by the Dyson in 2002, labor costs for a UK worker stood for £9 per hour compared to just £3 in Malaysia. Moreover, UK offices rent cost £114 per square meter per year, while similar rents in Malaysia are priced at just £38 per square meter per year. So certain parts of the country may be associated with certain types of labor. In City of London, for example, there may be opportunities to firms in the financial industry to access supply of highly skilled and experienced labor. There are, in addition, a number of specialist business schools in the city that are able to attract the good quality teaching and research staff as well as recruiting good quality students. So as a result, firms in the locality know that they have access to good quality labor. Then the other factor for the location of industry is the proximity of other businesses or external economies of scale. Where industry become concentrated in an area, there are generally a number of supporting or ancillary firms set up. In some cases, these firms supply specialized services or products to the other firms in the industry. For example, in and around fishing ports, there might be specialist engine services, specialists in marine insurance, firms specializing in processing and distribution, and so on. In some cases, any new firm seeking to enter in the market might well gain benefit from the fact that industry is concentrated in that area. In the city, there will be firms that have particular specialism in different areas of finance, whose expertise can be a major reason for firms locating in the city. These benefits can result in a lower average cost or cost per unit. This is called the external economies of scale. There might also be other specialist benefits. In our example of the chemical industry, the emergency services are especially trained to deal with the potential emergencies that might result from a chemical spill or explosion. In addition, there are specialist firms that deal with the problems of waste and processing of the unwanted chemical residues. All of these might be of benefit to a new firm looking to set up in the area. Then the another important factor is the reputation of an area. Certain areas of the country have a reputation for particular type of business, and this might often be due to its industrial past. The city of Hala, for example, Hala is in Sindh. The Hala is associated with the high quality pottery. Similarly, Hong Kong and New York for its financial expertise are just some examples. So any firm linked with those industries setting up in these areas might well be able to trade on the back of the reputation of the area. If a firm that sells cutlery sets up in Hala, it may be able to associate its business with the reputation that Hala has built up in relation to pottery. Similarly, if the insurance company is setting up in the New York may be able to gain some reputation purely by having postcode that is linked to the New York and so on. Similarly, the Hong Kong has huge reputation for high quality of its financial service industry. So any firm in the industry setting up in Hong Kong will be able to reap the benefits of being associated with this reputation of the city. As the structure of industry in the UK changes in favor of more service-based economy, the importance of industry that developed after the Industrial Revolution is declining. While this factor may be seen as being less important, it can still be a factor that a firm might consider. Then another important factor for the location of industry is the transport and communication services. Firms that rely on good communication network for information transfer or distribution may well look to locate in areas where such facilities exist. This may include high quality road networks, access to trains, airport, ports, and so on. And many new industrial estates have been built in and out of town areas, and major new trunk roads linking these estates with major road networks make locating in these areas worthwhile for some firms. For other firms, speed of information may be the crucial factor in their business. Many city areas were the first to have access to high-speed data network, broadband, cable, and satellite services, and so on. For a firm in Tokyo, for example, having high-speed data access is essential to the transaction of their business. The data transfer is an important part of many businesses in the knowledge economy. Then the speed of transfer depends upon having the right infrastructure in place. Not everywhere in the country has access to super fast data transfer, which may affect decision on location. In other examples, many hotel chains have located in a particular area, often near to motorway, exist around major cities or airports. Similarly, the companies like Travelodge or Holiday Inn or Holiday Inn Express or Ibis and Premier Lodges have all operated in clusters around these axes. They are hoping to take advantage of the business travelers who use these main arterial routes or highways. Then there are some physical factors for location of industries. For example, raw materials. The factory needs to be close to these if they are heavy and bulky to transport. Energy supply. This is needed to work the machines in a factory, and early industries were near to coal field, and today electricity allows more freedom. Then there are natural routes. The river valleys and flat areas were essential in the days before railways and motorways made the movement of material easier. Then site and land. Most industries required large accessible areas of cheap flat land on which to build their factories. Then there are human and economic factors which cause the location of industry. For example, labor. A large cheap labor force is required for labor-intensive manufacturing industries, and high-tech industries have to locate where suitable skilled workers are available. Similarly, there is a market. An accessible place to sell the products is essential for many industries. Those that produce bulky, heavy goods that are expensive to transport, and those that produce the perishable or fragile goods, that those that provide services to the people. Then there is transport. A good transport network help reduce cost and make the movement of material easier. Then cost of land. The greenfield site in the rural areas are usually cheaper than the brownfield site in the city. Then there is capital. This is the money that is invested to start the business. The amount of capital will determine the size and location of the factory. The government policies. The industrial development is encouraging in some areas and restricted in others. Now let's come to the second part of the topic, the location of residential area. A residential area is a land use in which housing predominates as different from industries and commercial areas. Housing may vary significantly between and through the residential area. These include single family housing, multiple family housing such as apartment, duplexes, townhouses, or similar configurations or condominiums or mobile homes. Zoning for residential use may permit some services or work opportunities or may totally exclude business and industry. It may permit high density land use or only permit low density uses. The residential zoning usually includes a smaller FAR or floor to area ratio than business or commercial area or industrial and manufacturing zoning. The area may also be large or small. In certain residential areas, largely rural, quite large tracts of land may exist, which have no services whatsoever. Because a large distance must be traveled to access the nearest services, most journeys involve using a motor vehicle or some other form of transport. So locating the residential area in city required transport. Furthermore, this need has resulted in residential land development usually existing or planned infrastructure such as rail and road. So wherever the rail and road goes, the residential areas were developed along these routes in a ribbon fashion or ribbon development pattern. You already know what is ribbon development pattern. The development pattern usually set forth in restrictive contracts contained in the deeds to the properties in the development, but may also result from or be reinforced by zoning. Then restrictive covenants or principles are not easily changed as the agreement of the all property owners, so many of whom may not live in the area that may need to be obtained to effect a change. The area may also be large or small. The residential differentiation are some of the various zones under which residential areas fall. For example, there is an inner city residential zone, or inner mixed zone, or established residential zone, or new residential development zone, or urban rural fringe area, or rural residential area, or sub-regional centers. So these are the various, you can say, large or small residential zones. Then residential development is the dominant land use within the city. I've already told you it is more than 50%. So offering residents a high quality and much sought after residential environment and providing some of the finest residential estates. The leafy trees, lined streets, and variety of housing type and style create a most appealing environment. Location of residence area further has the concentration of high quality community services together with proximity to the center of the city and the good access to public transport. And these are necessary attraction for the people who wish to live there. A more accurate prediction can be made of the types of housing required to satisfy the diverse characteristics of our population when further research in the form of detailed residential housing needs strategy is undertaken. There has also been a trend for many non-residential users to locate or creep into our residential areas. Some existing non-residential uses, such as schools, are considered integral to the residential area, providing services to local residents and sometimes broader population. But their worth has the potential to create traffic and other amenity problems or traffic congestion and to displace the housing. Concerning the location of new housing, it is imperative to maintain and increase housing choice and diversity within existing residential areas. The increased residential development opportunities, including high density development in and around commercial center and other strategic locations. So these should be located around commercial center. Furthermore, to protect existing housing stock and residential use, encourage a high standard of residential development. Minimize the impact institutions and other non-residential users on their surrounding area. Minimize the impact of commercial and industrial users in areas adjoining the residential and other sensitive uses. There are no specific specialist type of land use distribution of new housing, the internal organization of residential blocks, or location of the companies. Even the principal goal of socialist city planning to locate new residential area close to the working areas has been pursued in Western planning too. Thus, the residential area shall be located in such a way in any city that may fulfill the function of the living, working, and recreation of the family. Furthermore, there are a variety of housing types such as low income, middle income, and high income housing. Whereas the location of each of these housing types subject to the level of affordability of the family to live within close proximity to city center or in the outskirts of the city. Finally, let's look at a small case study about Dhaka, Bangladesh, where you find how his housing situation is.
This is a good day for 4-year-old Shahadat. When he complained of hunger, his father had a piece of fruit to give him.
When he tells me he's hungry, I try to bring him food after work. If I can't buy any food, he has to live with the hunger.
Abdurrahim's struggle to feed his family began 3 years ago. That's when one of South Asia's biggest rivers, the Brahmaputra, washed away the land his family had farmed for generations.
My land was over there. Now it's water. It's a river.
He now drives a rented rickshaw in a town across from his former home and earns about $1 a day. Barely able to afford the rent for this windowless, mud-floored shack, he's decided to move his family to Dhaka, the country's capital. He and his wife Shapla say they'll borrow the $10 they need for the trip and catch a bus within the week, joining a wave of some 400,000 migrants who move to Dhaka every year.
I feel terrible, but we have to leave everyone we know, all our relatives and neighbors, and take our kids to an alien place.
The city they're moving to is growing so fast, each new census is quickly outdated. But local experts estimate it's now home to 15 million people. Dhaka is perched on the leading edge of a global trend. For the first time in human history, the world has become more urban than rural. By mid-century, some 80% of the Earth's population will live in cities, many of them in the exploding slums of the developing world. For good or ill, Dhaka is setting an example.
You are seeing the early future of the world, which is not a very pleasant thought at this point in time. Half of the population of the developing world will be in the urban centers within the next decade.
If you want to know what that might look like, Dhaka is among the best places to visit. The World Bank called it the fastest growing of the world's 20 or so megacities, urban areas with populations over 10 million. It's also one of the poorest. Vast slums dot every neighborhood and house at least a third of its people. In less than 15 years, the United Nations predicts Dhaka's population will surpass that of Shanghai, Mexico City, or New York.
Well, I think if you simply project the present into the future, then obviously we are headed no good place.
At the end of British rule in 1947, Dhaka had just 250,000 residents. 2.5 decades later, when Bangladesh won independence from Pakistan, the city had nearly 1.7 million. Since then, rural poverty and frequent natural disasters have pushed Bangladeshis to Dhaka at breakneck speed. Each new decade has seen the city's population double. Everywhere you can see the damage wrought by this frenzied growth. By one rough estimate, traffic alone cost the city $2 billion a year.
I have adopted what I call car meeting. I take my colleagues with me in a car with a computer, and we talk and we hold our meeting in the car over the 2 hours.
Raw sewage flows into lakes and rivers so polluted they're beyond treatment. Electricity and water networks strain to cope with surging demand. Protests erupt periodically when routine water shortages last more than a few days.
Believe me, a serious water crisis in this city can bring down a government. That kind of magnitude water has acquired.
The new arrivals are often the hardest hit because most settle in slums. They have no title to the land they live on and can't get legal water or electricity. So they pay 2, 3, even 4 times official rates for pirated, unreliable connections.
If I'm a slum dweller, I don't have access to basic services. I don't have access to basic rights because remember, by definition, I'm illegally residing where I'm residing.
But new migrants keep pouring in. Some belong to Bangladesh's growing middle and upper classes who settle in the city's upscale neighborhoods. There, one-family villas are quickly being transformed into apartment complexes. Yet even those who end up in slums say moving to the city still offers the best chance for a better life. After moving to Dhaka 3 years ago, Mahmouda Akhtar found work in this garment factory. She now makes $36 a month ironing shirts, but hopes to be promoted to operating a sewing machine, which pays just over $40.
Before, I couldn't eat meat once a week, not even once a month. Now I can afford meat every week. I can buy good fish, big fish. I can afford all kinds of food. Before, it was difficult to buy a dress even once a year. Now I can afford a dress every month.
In the popular imagination, third world slums have been portrayed either as ladders for escaping poverty or traps where the poor get stuck. In reality, both are true, but those who climb out are quickly replaced by new migrants.
What is going to be the most scary part of this is the two worlds which in fact have been exploding side by side. The one is the world of the high-rise buildings being recreated for a small urban elite. And then there is the world of the slums.
Those we spoke with in Bangladesh said the question is not whether slums in a booming megacity like Dhaka should exist. They're the fastest growing part of this sprawling metropolis. And they herald Earth's future. Unplanned, hand-built, slum-packed cities are here, and many more are coming. The real question a city like Dhaka can help answer is what concrete steps can make them decent places to live.
The government, I think, still continues to bury its head in the sand. Somehow if you bury your head in the sand, they will just go away. Doesn't work like that.
One deceptively simple suggestion: put control over vital services in the hands of a single municipal government, accountable to the people it serves. As in many unplanned cities of its size, Dhaka's police, utilities, and roadways are controlled by a dozen or more national authorities, mostly run by political appointees.
If you, in fact, challenge the mayor that he is not doing his job, he will say that I cannot look after law enforcement in the city, I cannot even control the traffic.
Some NGOs have tried to fill the gaps, for example, finding ways to secure legal water connections for slum residents. But their successes are small scale.
But I want the government to give political commitment. What has worked? What can we take forward that works well?
With an estimated 1 million people a week moving from their rural homes into cities across the developing world, those lessons are relevant far beyond Dhaka's chaotic roads and crowded waterways.
Anything that we can make work in Dhaka, probably we could make work in almost any other city. But the challenge is enormous. It's a dynamic system. Before you have sorted one, the problem becomes bigger and bigger by the day.
As do the slums, whose residents day by day, night by night, are rebuilding the urban world.
So you have seen that how in Dhaka the housing is made and developed by the authorities and by the people, and how the location of the housing is developed in Dhaka. Thank you very much. So these are the references for this lecture. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for watching. For lecture notes, visit my blog www.ontimelectures.blogspot.com. Okay, students, that's all about location of industrial and residential areas. Now learn 10 ways to say goodbye in French. So, what are you going to say? Read from here. Here you find all these different words and terms, and you can say salut, or you can say au revoir, or you can say bonne journée or bonsoir. So, well, enjoy this terminology which I just learned today, and I just like to share it with you. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck and goodbye.